Think we're live. You'll send a notification out to some people if you're watching this on the replay. The beginning's always a little strange, but as the people get the notifications, and that's when people join us. So good to join this live. What's today? Wednesday, July 19th. I had to look at the date. Sometimes I don't remember what day it is or what time is it right now. I think we're recording in the evening. It's 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we'll see who will join us today. If you guys come into the chat and you've got something to contribute, then please have a question, submit it to the chat, or just say hello. Let me know where you're coming from. If you don't have any questions, still say hello. It's good to hear people. Writers Feng Shui, welcome. Glad to have you here. But yeah, what is going on? Been recording some new videos. If you have seen, there's been a lot of shorts coming out. I've been making a lot of shorts, just taking clips from our longer videos, seeing how that's working. So that's good. New members coming in. That's been cool. So if you are just joining us, just say hello. Let me know where you're from too. I always like to see where people are from. And if you've got questions, submit them into the chat. And kind of a couple different ways that you can support the channel, because it is a lot to keep this channel going. You can go to daduniversity.com/donate. That is one way to do it. Or you can also become a member. Go to the website, daduniversity.com, click on membership, and it's pay what feels good, which means you can pay what you want to pay. And so created that because ultimately had thought about, giving things away, which I do a lot. The videos are free and such. But it's a lot to operate this, cameras, editing, graphics, time, we have an office, all this stuff, and it's a lot of work. So Bryson from California, good to have you here. Frito702 from Vegas. I was just in Las Vegas, actually, 2 weeks ago. Awesome. It was a little warm, but it was awesome. And my wife actually had a conference there. And so the kids and I just tagged along, and it was great. So US 12M, dealing with my current girlfriend jealousy issues when I have to message my ex-wife to co-parent efficiently. Yeah. That, how do you deal with it? That's kind of curious. What are some strategies that you deal, because that's, I think, a common thing that if somebody's in a, had a previous relationship and or is co-parenting, and then they have to deal with the new parent, there's definitely some strategies about that. Curious to hear, how you do that. And Bryson, you're going to be a new dad in August, so what, we're July. So you got a month, getting ready. That's cool. Being part of Dad University is a good way to get prepared. Like anybody says, you are never totally prepared. And even, doing this stuff is really good. But you're never totally prepared, and that's okay. I mean, that's part of it, is accepting the fact that you're never prepared. Frito, any advice about my daughter? She's almost 2 and developed a bad habit of biting. Yes. So I actually have done a video. I've done a video on this, and I don't know if I released it yet. I recorded it. So what you want to do, first of all, what you don't want to do is bite the child back. You don't want to show the child exactly what it is that you are, trying to have them not do. So what you would do in that situation is when they bite, you would be very clear about saying no, no. There are some people that'll say that like you can pretend to be hurt. I don't necessarily like that. But what you can do is instead you say soft. So you might kiss them. And so, when a child is 2, they are barely understanding what's going on. They may be a smart child. They may, you know, even some children, if they're starting to talk or whatever, but they really think about it. They don't understand what is going on. And you have to be cognizant of that. So, the baby's biting, you're wanting to teach them what to do instead of what not to do. So, what you can do is if they bite, you say no, no biting, and pretty firm. And then you maybe kiss and you say kiss, and you get the child that it's okay to kiss, but not bite. And biting is actually a way that the child is trying to communicate. They don't really know how to communicate at that point. And so you're wanting to give them ways to communicate. So you can even, put your hand on them and say soft. This is kind of the same thing when a child hits. You're telling them what to do. You can say no, no biting, but then tell them what to do. And that's usually a really good technique. And it doesn't happen, right away, but when a child is 2 or 3, they really don't understand what's going on. And so, that's the one thing I think I try to get across for people. And because I remember this when my children were that age, that you think because your child's smart that like they really understand what's going on, and they understand so little of it. Their brains are simply not developed yet. And even, a child that's talking, a child that, is walking, a child that seems to understand, they really don't. Their brain has not been around very long. And so, it's our job to teach them what to do and, and in a sense, what not to do. But it's being patient with them, because getting angry and biting them back or hitting them or doing something, some people will think, well, then they'll know not to do that because they'll get hit. Well, that's a short-term solution. They may stop right away, but you're wanting to teach them what to do. And that is be nice and be soft. And so, and that goes through, as the child gets older as well. I mean, if you look at a lot of my teachings, and if you go into the courses as well, in the membership, I'm not one that promotes punishment. If anything, it's the opposite. We have very little, consequences that are given by me or my wife and I. Natural consequences happen. You're going to do something and you get in trouble. That happens. But instead it's teaching. And a lot of it is about that. And some people have a real difficulty with that, but the truth is it works. And it worked with me. I'm a product of that. The way that I was parented with my parents, and then also with my children as well. And, I have a 15 and 13-year-old that I just dropped off, and we have what I would consider, a great relationship, as well as, good moral character in our children. They're going to mess up, but good moral character. Let's see what else. Bryson says, what are some tips to prepare for the baby? Well, I've got a lot of videos on prepping for the baby. I would, you can have as best plan as you want. One of the things that I say in a lot of my videos is have empathy for your significant other. So put yourself in her shoes and what she's going through, and that'll make it, that'll make that a little bit easier on both of you. And then also have empathy for the child. The baby doesn't know what's going on, and the crying and the screaming and everything else is because they're trying to communicate and they don't know what's going on in this world. So that's our job, is to do that and to coach them along. And along with that, your partner right now is feeling like she isn't herself. What are some tips that you can do to help her with that? I think it's reassurance. Don't discount her feelings at all. Saying, oh, you're okay, or something. No, you say, yeah, it is hard. She's allowed to have some self-compassion. Going through the process of childbirth, I can't imagine from the woman's standpoint. You're dealing with hormones, you're dealing with sickness, you're dealing with the physical aspects of it. I mean, it is a lot. And so that same thing that I just said about empathy is important. You be empathetic of what she's going on. So the tips are listen to her, ask how you can help. Say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in helping you. What is it that I can do? Every woman is different. So I could go tell you, do more around the house. There's very specific tips I can do, but every person is different. And I think the best thing you can do too is to tell her that you're there for her, for support, that you understand it is difficult. You can't imagine what that is like. But you're there for her, and that's really important. And I'm sure she'll appreciate that support. So yeah. So if you're just joining us here, throw your name in. Sorry, I keep on seeing my hand. I cut my hand and it comes up on the screen. I'm okay, but I just got like a deep cut. If you want to help with this channel, there's a couple different ways that you can help and be part of it. You can become a member, and you get access to all the courses that I produce, as well as all of the videos edited and cut down and put into subjects and such. And that's pretty useful. And that's pay what feels good. In other words, you get to choose what the amount is that you want to pay. And you can go to daduniversity.com for that. Just click on become a member. And if you just want to donate something, that's very, very appreciated as well. You can go to daduniversity.com/donate. And it is a lot to put this on. There's all kinds of costs and expenses and time and energy and everything else. And when people donate or people become members, it really helps support this and allows us to keep this going. So everything is greatly appreciated. Every time I do these, we get new members, which is cool. But also, if you are not subscribed to the channel, that's another thing that you can do, is just hit the subscribe button. It's amazing. I just was looking at some of the stats, and the percentage of people who watch the videos who are actually subscribed is pretty low. And I want to try to increase that. I want to try to hit 100,000 subscribers. And so that is, right now we're at like 80,000. And granted, it's kind of a vanity number because I don't necessarily look at that all the time or obsess over it, but it is a big milestone that allows us to look better in the eyes of YouTube. And what that does is it pushes our videos out to more people. And so, I don't make a lot of money off these. It's funny. I looked at something the other day, and I did I had a video, and I think it got like a couple, I don't know, it was even like a couple thousand views or something like that. And I think it made 9 cents. It was a short. It made 9 cents. And so, you think about, the amount of time that some of these creators put into this. Luckily I have revenue from membership, and I also do some consulting and stuff. But I can't imagine, somebody that's, starting out and thinking that they're going to live off that. So, it's a lot. So, but the way you can help too is subscribe to the channel, and then share the channel with other people, other dads that you might think might help. We have moms too, but the content is really focused on dads. It's funny. I actually just recorded a webinar, or it's kind of like a webinar for an event that's coming up in like 2 months. And the audience is all women. And so it was kind of an interesting discussion, the topics, and it was, but it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed doing that. Woman interview and woman audience. And the reason often we do that, or I do that, is one, to reach some of the dads through the women, but also for the women of helping them in some way. And the topic was, how to get your husband more involved. And so a lot of women will look to the channel to get some insight and get some secrets on, how men are acting and what to do. So it's always kind of interesting. But I chose on purpose to speak so directly to men, and to dad. So, but if you're just joining us, throw your name or throw a hello in the chat. Ask any questions. I've got still a couple minutes left until I have to go because I have to pick up my children. And so, yeah, sometimes it's fun to just hang out. But of course, if I can provide value, I'd love doing that. So Brandon, my son is addicted to Miss Rachel, but it teaches him a lot. He's 20 months. What's a good time limit for toddlers for learning toddler shows? There are some guidelines from the American Association of Pediatrics, I think, as well as some other organizations. And usually at that age, it can be as low as maybe an hour a day, an hour or two, maybe a day, I think is somewhat limited. I think for babies, maybe even babies and toddlers, it was maybe 30 minutes. I've got to go back and look at the data, but I had done a video about that at that time. It's hard because sometimes you go over, I've done hundreds and hundreds of videos, and sometimes some of the data is hard to recall. But I think it's almost like an hour or so. Now, educational videos, people can certainly argue that, that's better. But I think, when your children are very young, it is good to get them on, learning with multiple disciplines. I think a video screen that is teaching them is okay for a limited amount of time. But you'll also want, physical learning, other kinds of stimulation, whether it is sight, sound, touch. Touching at that age is really important as far as the physical attributes of like blocks and building things or dirt, playing in the dirt. There's all kinds of benefits that come from that, just the physicality of it. So as they develop, I don't know that time, if you ask for a specific time limit, I'd say limit it to an hour at max 2 if it's, beneficial for you and them. But I think as a parent, you have to decide that, There are definitely parents who just like leave the TV on, and I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. So, sometimes it is very hard to have a small child entertained. The one thing I will say is that, your child doesn't have to be entertained 24/7. That's just a side note. It is okay for children to be bored. And teaching them or to teach, as a toddler gets a little bit older, teaching them that, and many they'll play on their own. They'll play, they'll read or they'll start to play with stuff, and then they will do things on their own and they're very creative. It's good to let them do that versus always have to feel like you always have to entertain them. Because I know that's something that happens too. So good questions though. Appreciate that. Let me see here. Yeah. So if you guys, as I repeat, if you want to support the channel, you can go to daduniversity.com/donate. That's one way to do it. Or you can also become a member. And that's, certainly a great way. It's a monthly membership, but it's pay what feels good. So go to daduniversity.com, click on become a member. And what you get for that, at a minimum, you get courses and videos. And there's a community as well where you can ask questions. But the courses are really, really helpful. I've got a course on communication, a course on discipline, a course on myths about fatherhood. We talk about expectations, gratitude, empathy. The discipline one is really, really popular. And also relationships. I've got one there on relationships, and, it's called, do you want to thrive or just survive? And it's understanding women, understanding moms, and my experience with that. I do have some background in that. My mother was an author and seminar speaker on relationships. So she was a very successful author. and created her own programs. And so I've added some of that material into my my program. So very thankful for that. So what else is going on? I think I mentioned in the beginning of this live, we've recorded a couple new videos. Those are coming out usually weekly. I'm trying to do weekly videos now. There was a little bit of a hiatus. And then also we're doing a lot of shorts. These short clips seem to be good. People like this information in short stints. And so we are, cutting some of these videos into small clips and doing it that way. It's always interesting to see which clips are popular and which clips are not. But any other questions you guys have? What about questions, related to fatherhood, just about how, or not even questions, but even just sharing how you're feeling right now? Put in the age of your child or children and any specific stage that you are going through that is difficult. I would be interested to hear that from people in the chat. It doesn't end, if you will. Like, you have the baby stage and there are certain nuances with that. You then have a toddler stage and there's nuances with that. You've got grade school and all of the, the different things that come along as they mature and get older. And then you have teens, which, I'm now dealing with 2 teenagers. And, the problems don't go away. They just change. I will say early on, it was a lot of physical sort of blocking and tackling. And now it's a lot more of a mental game. There's a lot more going on mentally. Also, I think you worry about, I always worry about the safety of the children. And as they now go and embark on their journeys with their friends and get out, it's summertime, they get out and riding bikes and going to places and things. You're always worried about the safety of your children. And that doesn't seem to go away. So I'm constantly worried about that. So any other questions you guys have? If you don't have questions, we can, we can end this, but I definitely came here. I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to discuss. It was more of just answering anybody's questions, letting you know that I am here, that the channel is still alive and thriving. The membership's still going. If you want to become a member, it's really, really helpful to the show or, to this show. And I'm looking at the possibility of, being on more regularly with lives. I do enjoy them. They're fun, especially when there's great questions. So Matthew, good to see you. Thanks for the question. From New Orleans, our son's almost 2. And so far, my wife and I have miraculously managed to raise a sweet boy. That's not miraculous. That's on purpose. But since my wife handles more than 50% most of the bedtime routine, is it okay to feel the guilt that I can't? Guilt is an interesting thing. I would ask, does your wife have strong or negative feelings about you not handling the bedtime routine? The bedtime routine is something that, some people love. Some people, it drives them crazy if it's not, pretty steady. But you will have an opportunity to interact with your child a lot. And I know too, I had a lot of late nights early on when I was, when my kids were young, and my wife handled a lot of that as well. And I remember feeling some of that guilt. Now, guilt is usually a feeling like I heard the feeling like if you are guilty, you probably are. And, you gotta kind of accept that. How you deal with that, is it okay to feel guilt? I mean, I don't think you need to. What's the value of feeling guilty? I think I've talked about that in the video. There's no real value in feeling guilt, especially if you're not going to take any action on it. Guilt is good for us when it causes us to change behavior for the positive. But guilt just by itself is a waste. I mean, it's a waste of energy. We think that by feeling guilt, we think that it makes the situation better. It doesn't. It doesn't help the situation. Just because you feel guilty, that's not going to make your wife feel better or your son feel better. So no, I don't think guilt is good unless it changes behavior in some aspect. So as an example, let's say you felt really guilty, and as a result of that, you changed your schedule, then the guilt has some positive aspects, that it actually caused something. But guilt without any change, no, I mean, that's not helping you. It's not helping her. It's not helping the child. So yeah, don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty unless that guilt helps change behavior. So, and I think, you make the time. I often talk about this, where the quality of the time you spend with your child is more important than the quantity. And when the child is young, that is sometimes hard to justify and, think about. Yes, your child will benefit from being around you in general, mannerisms, they'll learn words, they'll learn, all kinds of things by being around you. But when you are not present, or, you're busy doing your own thing, or like, there's not a tremendous amount of value other than maybe just they feel secure. There's not a lot of value that the child gets, versus if you were to spend, a small amount of time, but you're interacting with the child, you're talking, you're playing, you're giving them affection, whatever, that is way more beneficial to the child. And let's say you have, 3 hours of time where, you're on your phone, you're working, but your child's next to you, you're just doing your own thing. That's not as beneficial as 20 to 30 minutes of real good interaction, where your child has the opportunity to interact with you. So I've tried to teach people to keep that in mind, that, the quality of the time is really important. And, if you can't have quality time all the time, that's okay. You're not going to have quality time all the time. And for many dads and many parents, I mean, both men and women, they don't get to spend a tremendous amount of time. However, I forget the data, but we are spending way more time with our children now than our parents spent with us and previous generations. So Matthew said, at first she had a lot of struggles, but she's grown into liking it more. She may still feel resentment because I'm not doing it, but I try to be there 100% with him from getting home until he goes down. Matthew, I would also just, I would have that conversation with your spouse and saying, listen, I understand I'm, a lot of the times not there, and I'm trying to be home. How do you feel about that? Is that something that you have, some feelings about, or if not, and if she's like, no, I mean, that's fine, I understand you work, then okay, leave it. If she says, I mean, it is really difficult, I'm kind of struggling, it depends on that, and having that conversation. And then maybe you say, what I'd like to do is maybe on Saturday mornings, I can take him and whatever, like, you can balance it out. You can balance it out. If she is struggling with it because it's like she doesn't get her free time, well, then, you can ask her and say, well, hey, what can I do that would allow you to have that free time? Is maybe one of the days on the weekends, would you like to sleep in? Maybe on one of the evenings, if I take it and you can go somewhere, or, whatever. Like, that's communication between you and your spouse that I think is really important. It's kind of checking in and making sure that you're both, okay with what's going on. And, when both are making sacrifices, then it's a question of like, it's not, well, I'm making more sacrifice than you are. I mean, it's a team effort. And so, many fathers will feel, this is a feeling, it's not right, that their work is their contribution. And so when they get home, I'm not talking to you, Matthew, I'm talking about other dads, but many fathers will feel like their contribution is like they work, and then the mother is the primary, caregiver. When you get home, you are now 50-50, if not, in many cases, the mom will just hand you the child and be like, I've been with them all day. You try it. It's not easy. There's some dads that feel like that's easy, but I always found it difficult, to be honest. It was like work was easier. I just worried about myself or worried about what I'm doing versus, a screaming baby or changing the baby or feeding the baby wasn't an easy thing for me. I didn't know about kids. I hadn't been around kids very much. So it was all a learning experience. And so I kind of forget where I'm going with this, but it was the idea that, you both have to be okay with whatever that situation is. And so I'll leave it at that as I keep rambling. Mason, good to see you. First due in 2 weeks. Is it normal to feel like I am totally unprepared and know nothing? Yes, that is absolutely normal. Millions of fathers before you have felt that same way. I felt that same way because it is new. And give yourself some compassion. It is new. You aren't supposed to know everything right away. You will learn on the job. It's one of those things that you'll be okay. And but it's a very, very common thing that and she could be the same too. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse and still had a lot of questions and issues. And so she knew the babies like when they're being born, and she was comfortable with babies, but that's it. Like, the initial part. And so I don't think nobody knows it all. And, it's trial and error. It's learning what you can, watching things like this, watching the videos that we have. That's helpful. You want to become a member. And now I just looked at the time. I've got to go pick up my children. Want to just tell everybody, appreciate you guys for joining here. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, click on the notification so you get notified of when new videos come out, when I go live, etc. It's really appreciated. And I'll try to do one of these again. Send me some comments. If you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And you guys have a great. Oh, Mason, thank you. I appreciate that. That was a little tip that came through. Mason, that's awesome. Yeah, if you guys, that's always appreciated. The donations, you can go to daduniversity.com/donate or become a member. It's pay what feels good. I always appreciate that. It really helps contribute to the show and allowing us to do this. And so thank you guys. Thank you, Mason. And we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.